Canadian Management Professional Accreditation Program, Module 1, Position Profiles. Managers, supervisors, and team leaders are becoming more and more involved in the hiring of personnel for their organizations. Historically, hiring responsibility fell to the Human Resources Department, with managers, supervisors, and team leaders only contributing their expertise in the practical or hard skills area of the interview. They were not involved in the sourcing, screening, or reference checking steps. The first personal contact that an applicant has with an organization is usually the person who will interview them. This organizational representative is responsible for organizational entry. It is important that every interviewer have the skills and expertise to make the right hire the first time. Every applicant for a position in your organization is a 100% risk. The interviewer must reduce this risk through his or her recruitment, selection, and hiring processes. A comprehensive job description is the first weapon in the process to begin reducing risk. Armed with the job description, you can screen resumes to the job that you're hiring for and reduce the risk further. Once you have established your short list from the resume screening exercise, you then conduct the interview. After interviews have determined your selection, you conduct reference checks and data verification. The more the risk is reduced, the potential for the candidate to perform the functions of the position increases. What is the overall obligation of a recruiter to the organization? If you didn't get a job you really wanted and felt you were qualified for because they found someone better or more qualified than you, would you accept this? Of course you wouldn't. It's called self-esteem and pride, and you'll resist the idea that there are people out there who somehow are more preferable than you. Besides, no one is qualified to make these judgments by virtue of education and training, and job applicants know this and resent it. Pushing the job applicants' emotional buttons by using words like better, more qualified, and preferable only serves to force them to maintain their self-esteem, and the more desperate ones will challenge these statements through the courts because of the recruiter's perceived bias or prejudice. Rather than use this approach, we'll look at recruitment and selection as a risk reduction process and apply risk management tools that are in widespread use. Please refer to your risk chart handout. Look carefully at the risk chart. If we do not know whether the job applicant will succeed or fail on the job, then they are a 100% risk factor. This does not mean they are bad, it just means we simply don't know how they will perform and behave on the job. The first step in the risk reduction approach is to develop criteria for the job in the form of a position analysis or job description. Why is this job criteria a risk reducer? We collect this data because it will serve as a benchmark against which all applicants' skills, experience, background, and behavior will be measured. If we don't have this benchmark, recruiters will be forced to compare applicant against applicant, and the better resume writer or interview presenter will prevail, and you will still end up with an applicant who is a 100% risk factor. The next step in the risk reduction process is receiving the applicant's resume. Think of the job criteria as an exam containing questions that the applicants have to respond to, and consider their resumes as the answers. As in all exams, their resumes will be marked and scored, and pass-fail marks established using a resume scoring model. Both the position analysis and the resume scoring model are what we'll learn in this Module 1. The next step in lowering the risk is the interview itself. Here's where we'll structure and prepare oral exam questions that will test for skills, experience, and behavior. We'll also develop a scoring system for the responses. Later on, we'll learn how to conduct the interview in a 6-step interview process format that will save recruiters a considerable amount of time and effort. We'll do all this before sitting down only with those applicants who have successfully passed the resume exam. The next and last risk reducer is data verification. This will be the last opportunity for recruiters to lower the risk. Up until now, recruiters have accepted whatever the applicant has told them on their resumes or their interview room and have awarded points accordingly. In this step, everything must be verified. Everything. Upon discovery that an applicant really didn't have a particular experience, the recruiter will erase the points previously awarded. This way, applicants don't get the job because of bad references, but because they no longer have enough points to compete for the position. time to prepare a position profile or job description. Before we begin, we have to take a look at some basic management, organizational development, and legal issues. Most companies don't like job descriptions. It conjures up horror stories of employees who are asked to take on more work and responsibility and refuse because it's not in my job description, as they say. However, the great debate surrounding the usefulness of developing job descriptions is irrelevant when you consider the legal impact of not having one. A job description is one of the most legal documents in the organization. It is the first piece of evidence required by judges, arbitrators, and human rights investigators when legal challenges arise from hiring and promotional decisions, as well as from employment contract disputes. The common management fear that job descriptions restrict an employee's output pales in comparison to a long drawn-out legal battle for breach of contract, or in comparison to a long, slow dance in front of a human rights tribunal. In fact, if written properly, a job description increases the scope of an employee's involvement in the organization rather than limits it. The simplest approach and the most defensible is to predict future performance from past demonstrated experience using the job description as a benchmark and as the selection criteria. If the applicant has successfully performed those activities with other employers, then he or she has a high potential of successfully performing those activities for a new employer. This method will lower the risk of erroneous hiring decisions. Therefore, the objective of recruiting is not to get the best applicant, but to select the applicant with the lowest risk to the organization. In order to do this, the job description must be free of any subjective input from the description writer, including any references to gender. It is important to remember that this is a highly legal document. The job description describes what has to get done, not who is going to do it. Every item listed must be objective and relate to the job. Let's look at some of the organizational development aspects of creating a job. The organization. The job exists because of organizational requirements or needs, and the creation of a job should be the result of an organizational decision. Such decisions can be made at department, plant, division, or corporate levels. The organization only determines the need for, or basic purpose of, a job, and leaves it to the person to whom the position will report to define the job in more specific terms. The boss, manager, supervisor, or team leader. The key responsibility for seeing that a job is clearly defined, that the incumbent understands the nature and scope and functions of the job, belongs to the team leader, manager, or supervisor. In most cases, this role is simply to ensure that the existing job is well defined in terms of laying out the job objectives and setting quantifiable performance standards, and that the job definition is adjusted and updated from time to time as organizational needs or circumstances change. The incumbent. As an incumbent develops experience and expertise in a position, he or she will have a growing influence on the evolution of the definition of the job. While the incumbent cannot unilaterally change the job, the incumbent's suggestions and recommendations will ensure that the job evolves appropriately as conditions change. Consider this. Say you're a busy recruiter and you've been asked to fill a position with no job details. Who would you go to if you were allowed only one of the players? The boss, the organization, or the incumbent? What would be your concern if I was the recruiter and I told you not to get involved because I was going to sit with your incumbent and get all the details I needed? The essence of any position profile or job description must answer three basic questions. Why is this job being done? What are the objectives? And how will these objectives be achieved? Job purpose. Job purpose should answer the question of why the job exists in the organization, not what is to be done. This position exists to fill in the blank. Key objectives or responsibilities. Where a job has many responsibilities, the key responsibilities are the most critical or important areas of success. An objective is the end result of a series of tasks and routines. There should be no more than 5 to 7 key objectives identified. This allows the person in the position to focus on a manageable number of vital performance areas. Objectives indicate what is to be done rather than how it will be done. The objective is to ensure fill in the blank. Typical activities and tasks. Typical activities are basically ideas and examples of the action items to be performed to discharge the responsibilities or achieve the objectives. They are always tied to key objectives. This means that if there are any tasks being carried out that are not achieving a particular objective, then why are they being carried out? This area should answer the "how are these objectives to be achieved" questions. Start sentences with action verbs. These three areas are the core and the essence of any job. Virtually all position components and elements are drawn from these three areas. For job success in hiring the lowest risk applicants, it is critical that these three areas be well thought out and tied to the organization's goals and objectives. Remember, an employee's objectives are the boss's objectives, which in turn are part of the organization's objectives. If not, there will be employees working very hard to achieve goals that compete or conflict with those of the organization. Let's review the key elements we'll be using to develop our job description. This will give you a guide as to where we're going, and a full explanation will be given as we work together to fill in each element of a job. Let's develop a position that we can all relate to. How about a customer service representative, or CSR for short? We'll use this position to learn all the elements and components of a position profile. Position title, customer service representative. Here's the explanation. The first element that should be documented is the title of the job. It reflects where and how the job fits into the organization and the status it has in relation to other jobs. Issues. Beware of attracting applicants by using fancy titles. When deciding reasonable notice, judges take into consideration the status of the position. Calling the file clerk a data administration specialist may cost more in severance. Reports to manager, customer service. Explanation. This element indicates which department is accountable for the position. Due to the volatile labor market, it is wiser to specify a department name rather than the current department's manager name. This information will also become valuable when assessing an applicant's previous reporting relationships. Some issues to consider. By establishing the reporting relationship up front, the organization has given the manager or supervisor of the department the legal mandate to evaluate and document employees' performance. It is important for new hires to know to whom they are accountable and who will be measuring their results. Scope of position, the why question. This position exists to ensure existing customers are retained and new customers are added to the company's database, resulting in increased revenues. Explanation. This area should address the overall organizational need that led to its creation. Think of the things that have been going wrong in the organization that led to this job. Customer complaints were piling up and no one was getting back to them. Orders were lost or wrong, or no one knew when the customer would receive their orders. Some issues to consider. A very common reason for a lack of employee motivation is the fact that most employees know what to do and how to do it, but lack a vital understanding of why they are doing it. Without a clear purpose, it is difficult to remain enthusiastic about any job. Another issue is focus. When the purpose is clearly documented, the job description writer will ensure that all data about the job relates directly to the purpose. This enables the organization to declare the position redundant when the organizational need that led to the creation of the job becomes redundant. Key objectives, what? And the tasks or typical activities, how? Some issues. This data will assist the selection interviewers when probing applicants' backgrounds in achieving these or similar objectives in the past, and the number of objectives they were responsible for. Write some objectives and some activities that should achieve this objective. There may be 2 to 3 or even 7 suggested tasks for each objective, but just list 3 for this exercise. The level of detail will depend on the level of competence required. The less competent, the more tasks. Remember, you want to make sure the problems that this company had with its clients are solved. That's why you created this job. It would be foolish to pay this additional salary and have these problems unresolved. Objective number 1, to ensure customer service is continually improving. Tasks, develop and implement customer surveys, analyze results and make recommendations, implement and follow up on all improvements. Objective number 2, to ensure customer complaints are resolved. Tasks, log all customer service problems, organize and prioritize daily customer service call lists, maintain records of all customer service transactions. Objective 3, to ensure customers get their orders on time. Tasks, track all customer orders, prepare or track delivery schedules, call customers on status of orders. Objective 4, to ensure customer service policies are current and relevant. Tasks, analyze latest customer survey report, analyze existing policies and document variations, make recommendations for improvements. Objective number 5, to ensure customer information is available to the company. Tasks, enter all customer data into database. Conduct database audits and make corrections. Prepare customer service reports. Key relationships. Customers, on a daily basis, in order to solve problems and get feedback on service. Salespeople, on a daily basis, in order to track customer orders. Shipping clerk, on a daily basis, in order to track deliveries. Database admin, on a monthly basis, in order to conduct database audits. Explanation: this element documents both internal and external relationships that will have to be established by a new hire in order to succeed in the job. It describes the nature, extent, and purpose of this relationship. Key relationships are not direct line reporting ones. The job already assumes that the boss is the master. The best method to identify these relationships is to review each activity of the job and see who is drawn into the CSR's job while he or she is going about these activities. Some issues to consider. To ensure a new hire's survival, it is critical that he or she be aware of the players other than the boss who will directly impact the successful completion of the objectives. Inviting some internal key relationships to take part in the selection process will commit them to assist the new hire when the interaction happens. Another reason to document the key relationships is to let the new hire know that these relationships must be made. That is not an option whether these relationships are built or not, that it is part of the employment contract, and that failure to do so cannot be an excuse for missing objectives. Knowing that establishing key relationships is vital to the job's success, we may take a second look at who we want to hire for the job. Perhaps the technical expertise of the open position is secondary to how this person will get along with the personalities of the various players the employee will have to deal with. About 95% of all jobs should be considered personality driven, and more emphasis on identifying the right fit may ensure higher survival rates amongst the new hires. Managers and supervisors have an obligation to prepare new hires for success through training and through identifying the key players for them instead of letting them find out for themselves, perhaps with disastrous results. The sink or swim mentality is simply absurd and serves no purpose whatsoever except to amuse those who enjoy a good show. Forewarned is forearmed. Give the new hire a break and let him or her get the job done by starting off on the right foot. Problem solving, technical and process related. Dealing with broken equipment that causes shipping delays, twice every week. Coping with database crashes and downtimes, 5 times a week. Determining the appropriate survey questions and format, every quarter. Determining the appropriate solutions to customer complaints, every day, every hour. Problem solving interpersonal. Dealing with hostile clients, every day, every hour. Coping with conflicting priorities, daily. Coping with uncooperative departments, daily. Dealing with unrealistic expectations, every day. Here's an explanation. This element documents the real-life problems that must be dealt with and solved as a part of the job. This is a critical area and must be stated clearly. Problem solving is broken up into 2 areas: process, technical, and interpersonal, where personality conflicts and the day-to-day run-ins with people have to be handled well and not interfere with achieving results. Some issues to consider. Most organizations hesitate to put the problems of the job up front and let new hires find out for themselves. They feel that presenting real-world problems in the interview will turn away applicants. This is the whole point. Reducing the risk and controlling organizational entry is the objective. It is smarter to find out before they are on the company payroll that they are not prepared to deal with the job's problems. Those who do accept the job also accept the fact that these problems must be solved as they are part of the employment contract and are part of the overall performance review. Decision making. Final approval of. None. Here's an explanation. This element documents the decisions that must be made as part of the job. This element is often confused with problem solving, hence the statement, final approval of. There is usually very little real decision making until the second or third level of management. Do not remove this element from the job description. If there are no decisions to be made, indicate this clearly on the form. Again, use the CSR's objectives or activities and decide if the CSR will have any final say without recommendations or getting others involved. Some issues to consider. Documenting this element on the job description sends a clear message to the applicants that these decisions must be made and are part of the job. Restricting the decision-making to the job's objectives eliminates the possibility of the new hire focusing their talent and energy elsewhere. Financial and measurement data. 3-hour maximum follow-up time on 100% of client complaints. 0% errors or omissions in the customer database. 2-hour maximum response time for customer queries. Survey 100% of customers every 15th of March, June, September, and December. $5,000 budget for each survey. Here's an explanation. This element, the financial and measurement data, lays out the parameters of the job in terms of hard, quantifiable measurement data. A budget is also considered measurement data. Some issues to consider. Every job must have hard numerical measurement data. Every job can be quantified to provide this data. In the CSR example, the organization created the position primarily because of excessive customer complaints. What is the point of this newly added job if there is no reduction in complaints? This question alone demonstrates the need to focus on and document the job purpose. Another issue is that the new hire starts the job with clear, measurable objectives rather than relying on the subjective whims of the immediate supervisor during a performance review appraisal. Formal education. Must be able to pass a grade 12 equivalent English and math exam. Here's an explanation of formal education. This element documents the educational level required for the position. Some issues to consider for formal education. The Human Rights Commission sees educational requirements as employment barriers because equality of education is a myth rather than a reality. Target group applicants are therefore at a disadvantage even if they possess skills and experience for the job. For a CSR's job, let's assume we initially felt it required a PhD. The issue is not whether this educational level is legal or not, but what class of applicants it screens out. Until recently, PhDs were generally white males in their 30s. Therefore, the requirements became discriminatory. The organization will now have to rigorously defend this level of education for CSR's job. Recruiters complain that setting the educational requirements too low will result in 4 to 5 times the number of resumes to deal with. They further complain that setting the level too high results in few or no applicants at all. What to do? When all else fails, go back to the job description and identify the level of education really required for the job. For the CSR's position, it appears that oral and written language skills and mathematical competency are required to carry out the objectives and typical activities. We hope grade 12 will be sufficient, but unfortunately this grade level doesn't mean all grade 12 students can read or write, or even add up a column of numbers, so we intend on lowering the risk by requiring applicants to pass a grade 12 oral or written English exam and a math test, all borrowed from the local high school, instead of relying only on the certificate. Who cares how well they did in geography or history? Another issue is that a number of organizations look for educational requirements beyond the initial position so that new hires can progress to more senior jobs. Unfortunately, it appears that human rights commissions will frown upon this approach and insist that the educational requirement be tied to the job, as it is on Monday morning. Still, another issue is the fact that an organization has the right to increase its educational standards as long as sufficient and reasonable time is given to existing employees to attain that new level and at the organization's expense. Otherwise, the organization has, in effect, breached the original employment contract, and these employees can sue for wrongful or constructive dismissal. If existing employees can't or won't attain the new level, they can be moved to another job or terminated. Bottom line, if you do something wrong, You should do it to everybody because it is more defensible than one department doing it right. If you want to raise your educational requirements to community college, then make sure every CSR you have has a community college diploma. Training: Customer Service Diploma, Planning and Scheduling Certificate, Negotiation Skills Program. Here's an explanation of training. This element describes the certificate programs or skill workshops that would be useful to this job. As in all other elements, this information must be derived from the objectives and activities of the CSR's job. The above are just samples and may not be actual degrees or diplomas. It should give you an idea of what goes here. Other key skills or product knowledge: Likert Scale Customer Survey Tools knowledge, Oracle database knowledge, PERT planning and scheduling experience, MS project knowledge. Here's an explanation of other skills. This element documents the names of the systems, equipment, or processes that are required for the job. The above are just samples and may not be for real. It should give you an idea of what goes here. Some issues to consider for other skills: this data is drawn from the systems and equipment that the new hire will be using on the job. If two equally qualified applicants are available, then the one with direct past experience with these systems will be the lower risk. Even if the other applicant can convince recruiters that they can learn quickly, the point is that they do not have the knowledge now, and this simply poses a greater risk to the organization. Experience: Past experience preparing and implementing customer surveys, past experience in analyzing results and making recommendations, past experience implementing and following up on all improvements, and past experience in every task and objective of this job, past experience in coping with database crashes and downtimes, past experience in determining the appropriate survey questions and format, past experience in determining the appropriate solutions to customer complaints, and past experience in solving each of the technical and interpersonal problems. Here's an explanation of experience. This element describes the desired work history that applicants should possess when applying for the job. If they have done these activities before, then they are a low-risk applicant. You'll notice that we also require past experience in having solved those technical and interpersonal problems. Some issues to consider for experience. The key to lowering the risk is to predict future performance from past demonstrated experience. This means that if the CSR will have to reduce complaints and improve customer service, we'll want applicants to have reduced complaints and improved customer service for previous employers. This does not mean that applicants who do not have this experience will not be capable of performing these tasks successfully. It simply means that applicants who do not have this experience are at greater risk than those who have. Remember, recruiters are not paid to judge whether applicants are good or better than others. Professional recruiters do not make emotional judgments about applicants, but simply assess risk. What all this means is that you want past experience in all the activities listed in the CSR's job. Nothing else will reduce the risk. Consider this. Your experience may be that some of the best people didn't have any of this experience beforehand, and it worked out really well. The reply could be that, in fact, a high-risk applicant was hired and got away with it. How many other high-risk applicants have they let in and who have failed? To be flexible, applicants may not have direct past experience, but may possess knowledge of how to go about it. Supervisory responsibilities. Directly supervised, 0. Indirectly supervised, 0. Here's an explanation of supervisory responsibilities. This element documents whether the CSR's job directs subordinates directly or indirectly. For a management or supervisory position that did have subordinates, the numbers would be compared to how many people the applicant have directed. The organizational chart. Manager of customer service supervises a customer service representative who supervises nobody. Here's an explanation. This element graphically documents the job's reporting relationship. Some issues to consider. It is unwise to waste precious interview time explaining direct and solid line reporting relationships. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then show the applicant a picture of how he or she fits into the organization. At this point in the recruitment process, there is no reason to display more than A, the position, B, the position it reports to, and C, the position reporting to it. That's it for the position profile. You may have noticed that the traditional sentences like must have a high level of interpersonal skills, analytical, and communication skills are not reflected in the document we just completed. Frankly, they have no business here. The profile describes what has to get done. If it describes who's going to do it, the profile would be discriminatory. We tend to screen out the best people for the job. We place employment criteria in our job descriptions for no valid reasons. Perhaps we should look for people who can cope with the nature of the work rather than relying on the artificial employment barriers. To date, everything on the CSR's job is measurable and quantifiable on this benchmark that will screen applicants. There are no references to any traits or characteristics. Not only do few recruiters possess the clinical qualifications to measure interpersonal, analytical, and communication skills, most will have trouble defining what it means. If you can't measure it, leave it off this document. And if the applicant successfully carried out the CSR's objectives, can we not assume that he or she must have possessed these traits? Absolutely. The traits and characteristics needed to perform this job successfully are already inherent in the objectives, tasks, problem solving, and key relationships elements. Take a look at the benefits of putting together a good job description. First, it ensures valid and reliable interview evaluations. It provides for a more objective interview. You will have a benchmark for measuring the applicant's past experience against the required skills. This will reduce the risk of hiring the wrong person. You will no longer have to rely on gut feelings or play amateur psychiatrist. Second, it saves considerable time and costs. It provides a better screening tool to avoid the needless time and money wasted interviewing applicants who have no business being there. Third, it provides access to management and company operations. It provides recruiters with an excuse to leave their cubicles and find out how the company operates and what skills people use. The gathering of position information brings recruiters into contact with many of the key players. Fourth, it enhances employers' credibility and image through the recruiter. It provides recruiters with the tool to sell the job realistically and leave the perception that the hiring organization is professional, has its act together, and knows where it's going. Next, provides a benchmark for job performance. Provides common meeting grounds between employees, management, for an understanding of each job and what constitutes success or failure. 6. It establishes equitable rates of pay. Provides a means of establishing equitable rates of pay in accordance with the degree of skills, difficulty, and responsibility required. 7. It serves as a succession planning tool. It demonstrates the relationship of one's job to another's and helps establish promotional requirements within the organization. And finally, it identifies training needs. It identifies immediate training and development action plans for the incumbent. The successful applicant will not have all the training, knowledge, or skills listed on the position profile. This provides a quick needs analysis of what training is required from day one. The Canadian